Hi everyone, this is Joe Gentili from Left Tail Risk Advisors. So in this video, we're continuing our series of describing the types of life insurance, and we're describing another type of permanent insurance here, which is variable universal life, and its close cousin, private placement life insurance. So when I was describing the types of permanent coverages that exist, I like to think of it in terms of a risk spectrum, with whole life insurance being the most conservative, the universal life insurance policy somewhere in the middle, and then the most risk on would be these types of policies, variable universal life and PPLI. And the reason why it's risk on is because these policies, which by the way are securities, so that requires for somebody to sell these policies, they have to be both securities licensed and insurance licensed, unlike these other types of insurance policies. As of recording this video, I am no longer securities licensed, so I'm not licensed to sell these videos, but to sell these policies. But I still want to make an educational video on it. So variable universal life, I'm going to start with that. The chassis is similar to other types of universal life insurance, except you have the option to invest your cash value into what looks like mutual funds. So they're securities essentially. So you'll have a host of options. You'll have usually a fixed return type option where you can invest your money and get kind of what the general account of the insurance company is owning. But most people buy these policies because they want to invest in market-based mutual funds, the most popular being the S&P 500 fund, of course. Unlike an IUL, which has caps and floors, there's no caps and floors here. So you're able to, if the stock market, the S&P 500 goes down 20% in a year, you could lose 20%. If it goes up 20%, your cash value can gain 20%. And since you're invested in the actual securities, you also benefit from the dividends as part of this. So that's very attractive because this is done within the insurance wrapper, which means you get the tax benefits of that as well. The cash value accumulates income tax free, the death benefit gets paid income tax free, and you're able to borrow money out of the policy with policy loans tax free. You know, there's caveats with that, but just gonna leave that leave that at that for now. So it gets a lot of those benefits, and in some states, it also gets the creditor protection that you get on life insurance in general that you would not get in a regular taxable account. So that's a big benefit. The drawbacks are, you know, again, it's risk on. So you have the same drawbacks that you would have in a normal security. You could lose your money just the same way as if you had an S&P 500 in a taxable account. But you got additional concerns here that you don't have in a taxable account. You have to pay for the life insurance. So there's fees and expenses in these accounts. And remember, like I said, with other types of universal life insurance, it's really like a term life insurance that's attached to this for life. So the cost of insurance goes up every single year in these policies, starts out low and gets really high later on. So if you're not accumulating cash value, if your investments aren't performing as to what you're hoping they would, this can develop a really large deficit over time and puts the policy at risk of lapsing. There's a double whammy with this with variable universal life. So there's a concept in life insurance called net amount at risk. And so what that is if I have a $1 million death benefit, let's say, and I have $300,000 in cash value, I'm really buying $700,000 in life insurance. And that's what my cost of insurance is going to be based off of. With a variable universal life insurance policy where I have the ability to lose cash value, let's say the stock market goes down by a third, my $300,000 in cash value is now $200,000 in cash value. I still have that $1 million death benefit, so now my net amount at risk is $800,000, not $700,000. So not only is my cost of insurance going up because I'm older, but now I have to effectively buy more insurance, so it's going up for that reason too. Those additional costs in the policies further reduce the cash value. So these policies require pretty close monitoring. There's a lot, especially if you're invested in something volatile like the S&P 500, it needs close monitoring, and you may have to add in large amounts of additional cash to keep the policy healthy and keep it from lapsing. So there's real risk involved in that. The close cousin of variable universal life insurance is private placement life insurance, PPLI. It's similar and a cousin in the sense that you have a life insurance policy, but you're investing your money in something outside of the general account of the life insurance company. With PPLI, typically the reason why people buy these policies is because you're able to invest in alternative investments. There's some rules around that. Like, for instance, it can't be in something you control. So if you own a hedge fund, you can't invest in your own hedge fund. But what this allows you to do is, in addition to accessing different types of investments that you can with an off-the-rack mass market variable universal life insurance policy, you're able to put it into investments that are particularly not tax advantageous. And since you have the insurance wrapper around it, and that mitigates a lot of the tax problems with the investment, it could take something that looks unattractive because of the tax treatment and make it very attractive because of the insurance wrapper in PPLI. And also the pricing is different. PPLI policies are usually institutionally priced, so they get better pricing on cost of insurance and expenses than you would in a mass market policy or a mass market VUL typically. So these are very useful. They're typically marketed and only really used by people with very high, ultra high net worth, $25 million and up. So it's not something that's available for most people. For most people, the version of that that's available for them is the the variable universal life insurance policy. So these have, again, going to like the pros and cons and uses of it. These policies can be used for estate planning. They can be used for wealth transfer. They also are used for a lot of people with just cash value accumulation, that they plan on accumulating cash value and using at least a portion of the money through policy loans during their lifetime in retirement. So these can work. But again, you're taking on a lot more risk than you would with a whole life insurance policy. So you have to be mindful of that. You also have to be mindful of the fact that to keep the policy in force, you may have to put in a lot more money. And if you're taking policy loans out of these, you really have to be careful to make sure that it's funded to a healthy level, because if the policy lapses after there's policy loans and there's a lot of gains, there could be negative income tax consequences with that. They also require a lot of monitoring. So this is not the type of policy that you want to buy from an agent. And, a year or two after you buy the policy, there's nobody monitoring this and you're just handling it on your own. That's really a recipe for disaster. So you really want to make sure that if you're going to have this, you understand that this is a lifelong commitment and you need a professional to be working with you on this policy really throughout the course of your life. So they can be powerful tools, but there is a lot of risk involved in these policies, and um, that's what I would that's what I have to say about that topic at a broad educational level. So, again, I hope these are useful. I hope I'm doing a decent job. If you're trying to understand the differences between these different types of life insurance chassis that are out there with IUL and guaranteed no lapse universal life insurance and whole life insurance and term life insurance and PPLI and variable universal life. There's a lot of different types out there. There's a lot of people out there that just basically sell one type of these. They really push one type over the other, but I'm trying to give this to you with the pros and cons so that you understand this on a factual and educational level with the hype kind of stripped away. So any questions, feel free to reach out, and I hope you subscribe if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more in the future. Thanks.